Hi, this is Sara Marks, the author of the 21st Century Austen series. And for this Ask Me Anything series, this is the second video. And I told you I had about 15 questions that people have always seemed to ask me at events or in emails or just when I'm having conversations with them. So today, for our second one, we're going to talk about me as a reader and the books I've read in my genre. So I write contemporary romantic comedies. But in the past, they've also been called chick lit. And when I was young and began reading chick lit, they were first, Bridget Jones' Diary, Confessions of a Shopaholic, the things that we think of as quintessentially 90s and early 2000s chick flicks, chick lit, rom-coms, and such. There is a bit of humor, but primarily a romantic subplot. And if a woman is on a journey, it is deeply connected to her romantic future. But Bridget Jones' Diary was my first interaction with Jane Austen pastiche. And that is, in the current series I am writing, what I am writing, Jane Austen's pastiche, or fan fiction. It includes books highly inspired by Jane Austen's classics. And if you've never read or seen Bridget Jones's Diary, it's blatant. Colin Firth plays Mark Darcy, the Mr. Darcy character. He is the 1990s king of Mr. Darcy. I mean, there are still arguments today in the Austen circles about which of the two big productions, the 1995 BBC miniseries, is better or worse than the 2005 feature film, which is significantly shorter. And yes, I believe both are amazing. One gave me a true to work adaptation, and the other gave me Emo Darcy, who I will never stop loving for his intensity of everything. Also, I call him socially awkward Darcy, but mostly Emo Darcy, because that's who he is. He is socially awkward and emo. But Bridget Jones' Diary was my first time engaging with the Jane Austen pastiche. And it came maybe about 4 or 5 years after I had first read Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion. My second interaction with Jane Austen's pastiche took me a while to realize, because I interacted with it before I even knew what it was. I had not read Emma when I saw Clueless, so it did not dawn on me until I was much more engaged in Austen adaptations and film and reading her collection, not just Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion, that had been Emma. And that was my first teenage experience. And both of those sat in my head for years. I never really wrote anything as fan fiction. For me, they were just there. They weren't what I was going to work on. But that changed for me when Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies came out. The book, not the movie. While I love that movie also, but for very different reasons, and I have my own issues with it. When I read the book, I was living in this small city that highly inspired Lecoq, Massachusetts, in my series. And a local bookstore had opened, and they wanted to do a book club. And the woman organizing it, who was a friend of mine, made a point of inviting me because she knew I had read Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, and that had been the first book they picked. So I went with this in mind, and as I was chatting with one of the other people there, they told me about the entire world of Jane Austen pastiche. And I know another video I will share the actual books that I got into through this woman, the ones that started me thinking along the lines of modernizations and writing my own versions of these stories. And I got into some hot and heavy ones. And yes, Regency era, though not my favorite, there were some hot and heavy Regency ones. And once I knew they existed. I saw them everywhere. And this was before the real heyday. So for me, the first books in my Jane Austen pastiche journey were Bridget Jones' Diary and then Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. But my experience with that has often been more in the movies. So for me, consuming media, whatever platform I do it, audiobook, paperbook, ebook, movie, TV show, podcast, for me it's about the storytelling. But the romantic comedies that first got me started were when they were still chick lit and when they were still problematic. And while some of those books remain dear to my heart, I also ranted and raved about them and how much they angered me when I was reading them, to the point where I will never pick them up again, because as much as I love them, I also hate them. And yes, Bridget Jones is still at the top of that list because I hate that series so much, but I love it because it showed me what could be done with a classic problem and a modern woman. And that's who I write. I hope that answers your question, if this was your question. If not, submit your questions below in the comments. If you liked this video and want me to do more, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these videos, audiobooks, and whatever else I post, because I'm just trying to post some content and get some views and maybe get subscribers. So like, subscribe, ring the bell, you know, the YouTube stuff. And I'll see you next week.